What is up, Pack-A-Day peeps? Surprise, I, Rachel Hopmayer, am your host for tonight, switching up the roles on Andy Herman for this Monday Night Football breakdown, which was really a Packers victory that was absolutely carried by Aaron Jones. You have to start with that. Let's talk about those 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I'll start by saying, this is usually where, I've already done a full analytical approach in, the press box, and I have already rewatched the game. And no, this is not this at all. I was at the game in the stands as a fan. So we'll obviously have, or at least I'll have an opportunity to jump into all of that as the week goes on and bring a little bit more of an analytical approach. But I thought from the stands, right? And I think, obviously, as you mentioned, Aaron Jones was the catalyst for this offense. And I think right now, and I kind of tweeted this out during the game as well, right now when the offense runs through Aaron Jones, it seems just there's a whole nother level of balance. And Rachel, I'm not breaking any news here to literally anybody listening, but right now the NFL is about balance all over the place. And what I mean by that is if your offense has the ability to stay on balance and be able to run the ball and pass the ball at any given moment, it makes things so incredibly much more complicated for the opposing defense. And we saw last week a Packers offense that played a ton of 11 personnel, got behind the down and distance, got behind the chains, got behind the scoreboard, became insanely one-dimensional. We always talk about how this is a passing league and you have to have a great quarterback and you have to do all those things, which is 100% true. However, it's interesting in the juxtaposition, whereas the defense wants to get you in obvious passing situations. Defense, whether it's in baseball, whether it's in soccer, whether it's in football, defense is about making the opposing side predictable. And I thought the Packers today, the antithesis of a week ago, they made everything much more easy. They simplified the game plan. They got the ball in Aaron Jones' hands. They stayed balanced on offense. And on the flip side, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, but in the first half, when Detroit was on balance and they could run the ball or pass the ball, Green Bay's defense struggled mightily. In the second half, when Green Bay took the lead and they got a couple of those turnovers and the lines became predictable, then we saw what this Packers defense is capable of when the opposing offense finally gets in some predictable situations. Balance is the name of the game, and I thought Green Bay did a much better job of that, especially in the second half of this game.
You're absolutely right. And I think specifically for this 2021 Packers team, as of now, what we've seen through the first 2 weeks, balance works in tandem with momentum. When Green Bay loses that energy in the first half, it's impossible for them to also grasp that balance. But when they're able to run to the passing game, that's the type of balance you're talking about. If we stick with the offensive side of the ball, you have to assume that things were going to at least be different from the game in Jacksonville, as long as Green Bay was able to garner more time of possession than they could against the Saints. So when you see more plays on the field, all we've been able to see mainly from the passing game so far is that it still runs through Tonyan, Adams, and Jones. I mean, they didn't target Cobb again until later in the game. What are you making of that so far in that rotational wide receiver room?
I think part of the issue is and it's a good problem to have, right? But you have a lot of mouths to feed in this offense. And you already have a situation where we know Aaron Jones and Davante Adams are going to be the alphas of this offense. And you want everything to run through them. And then the supplementary guy is Robert Tonyan, and he's going to kind of make everything else move. And then you've got pieces that are going to bring different things to the table. And MVS could have had a massive game if Rodgers and MVS just connect on a couple passes. And he's going to be somebody that has that ability to take the top off of defense and really keep safeties on his side of the field. And that has a huge role, whether even they connect on some of those passes or not. Just the safety having to, hold to his side a little bit more can still have a huge impact. Then you have a Randall Cobb. You saw EQ get snaps today. You've got Alan Lazard. You've got AJ Dillon. Josiah DeGuara didn't even play this game. And there's just so many mouths to feed within this offense. And I think Randall Cobb knows, and I think Alan Lazard knows, and I think MVS knows that this offense is going to run through Jones and Adams and then a little bit of Tonyan, and then everything else that you take advantage of when you can. So the Cobb thing isn't super surprising to me. And it's always, like I said, it's a good problem to have, but it's a double-edged sword too, because if you get to the end of the game and you're like, well, Devontae only had 3 targets and they didn't give the ball to Aaron Jones, you're like, well, what was the game plan in this game? Why didn't you get the ball to your star players? So I think it starts and ends with Jones and Adams and Tonyan and how this offense goes. And I think any other, table scraps that are left over, I think the rest of the guys have to be happy with.
Right. And a lot of those catches were contested. I mean, other than an Adams rare drop in triple coverage, he's still opting to throw to Tunyon in double coverage deep instead of Lazard open right in front of him. There's so many different presses and coverages that we've seen Rodgers choose to challenge, especially tonight. And I think that does show the confidence is growing once again in the passing game.
And a couple of those throws too, like the Tunyon throw is beyond. Now we can argue that maybe he should have taken the pass to Lazard on that play, but I don't think you're going to pick a fight with Aaron Rodgers after that absolutely amazing. And Matt LaFleur called it a teddy bear throw, like a throw at like the circus or the fair where you have to make that just ridiculous throw to win a teddy bear. So I guess they called that a teddy bear throw, which is amazing. And then the deep ball to Davante Adams, just it makes, I know that obviously not everyone gets to go to games and stuff like that, but when you have the opportunity, like those things do not get old. And whatever happens with Aaron Rodgers past the season and all the drama and all that stuff, which will eventually take place, being there to see moments like that and remember moments like that, it just doesn't get old. And it's just so fun to see what a special talent that he is and has been, and just seeing those moments live and in person.
And you were one of more than 77,000 of the Lambeau crowd tonight. So let's talk about that atmosphere. Seattle's got the 12th man. What was it like being at Lambeau tonight?
I thought I've been to a lot of games in my life. I've been to playoff games. I've been to home openers. I think home openers are honestly always my favorite because there's just a different energy. It's even better if it's the opener, like the first week, but I was so impressed with the fans. And obviously this is a degree of difference because no fans all of last year. There was probably some pent up energy that people were excited to get out. I thought that was truly a playoff atmosphere level game. I actually gave the Packers fans a lot of credit because on like the third or fourth drive where the Packers were consistently giving up points on defense, and the Lions offense, which is not exactly the most, at least expected to be the most high power offense in the world, is going down. I thought the intensity from the crowd on the third downs and the red zone opportunities was there throughout the course of the game. So I thought it was a really jazzed up, fun, energetic crowd. And I thought they did a great job. Even when there were moments where it didn't feel so great, I was really impressed with their effort and energy throughout the game.
And it sounded like they were cheering at the right time.
Yes.
Everybody got their stuff in order. It's regular season. I think Packers fans know you got to listen to what LaFleur wants in that moment.
And they did there was a bunch of different video. Like there was a lot of ones where like when the Packers were on offense, they had like Lazard come on and like do like the little sign for like, there were some heavy handed reminders. These were not little hints. Like there were some very clear reminders to Packer fans to stay quiet on offense and to get loud on defense, including a pep talk from Charles Woodson prior to the game to say, get loud on defense and special teams and, don't say a thing on offense. So they got the hint at least, and it worked out well.
I can't believe this is something we truly do have to go in depth on, but I would love to be a fly on the wall in the game entertainment room this week of them making those promos and realizing, wow, we have to do this for one of the most loyal, football knowledgeable fan bases in the world. But let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Joe Barry said he was fine, wasn't in a bad mood, picking right up where he left off, even after a bad loss this week. We did see some adjustments, specifically Eric Stokes got plenty more action, and I do think it paid off pretty well for the rookie.
Yeah, I think that's one of my biggest takeaways. And again, I'm super excited to go back and watch the tape closer and see just how he performed. But man, first glance, I thought he had a really nice game. 2 fourth down stops, multiple passes defended. It seems through the first 2 weeks of his career, when teams have targeted him, it hasn't exactly gone well or according to plan. So I'm really excited about that. I'm intrigued in the fact that I think a lot of people may have expected, all right, if Eric Stokes got a lot more playing time, Kevin King may not have. I think that would have been the obvious trade-off. Instead, they put a lot of Kevin King in the slot. They take Chandon Sullivan off the field. I think part of that is a little bit more of, Quintez Cephas, a little bit more of TJ Hawkinson, maybe some of these more bigger bodied wide receivers for Detroit. And we'll see if that continues to be the case. Chandon Sullivan was in the dime in the slot. And actually it was interesting, in dime, we saw Kevin King and Stokes out wide with Jair and Sullivan on the inside. And then actually Amos and Savage back at safety. Whereas Amos had been at the actual like kind of nickel linebacker spot in training camp and in the first week. So I'm really intrigued to see how this kind of moves forward. King gave up the big play. Now to his defense, there was a ton of time for Jared Goff, and he had good coverage up until that point. It was just a lot of a lot of time. I'm not necessarily forgiving, King for the play, but I thought, there was a lot of time to throw there. And I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, I don't think off the top of my head, he gave up much the rest of the game. So that's another player that, even though I know is not exactly in the fans' greatest graces at the moment, I'm really intrigued to go back and look at the rest of the game and see how he kind of played in this one as well.
I think overall, I would say King had a better performance than last week, but it remains inconsistent is the biggest deal. And we all know how much consistency matters, especially on this defense. But I do agree that Amos and the nickel is exactly what Barry was trying to work for in training camp, and to see it actually come to life, I do think, again, paid off a little bit more for what this team was looking to do. Additionally, when you look at Rashawn Gary and his opportunity with extended snaps, did he get some pressures? Absolutely. But it certainly wasn't enough on Jared Goff. For most of the game, he had plenty of time in the pocket.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the bigger concerns I still have coming out of this game is just the lack of pressure. Even in the second half, you did see the one sack, but Detroit did have to get pretty predictable later in that game, and you still didn't see. You saw a couple at least pressures. I mean, the interception by Devondre Campbell was a pressure, I believe, off of Jonathan Garvin. So just because it doesn't necessarily end in a sack, it doesn't always mean that there wasn't pressure, but I still think overall the lack of pressure was a bit concerning. And again, without Z, that's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out moving forward. I think the big thing for this defense is, and let me start by prefacing, defense right now in the NFL is very, very difficult. This is not an easy endeavor in any week. And if you would say right now you could sign up for 17 points allowed and 2 turnovers, I don't care how you get them. I don't care if it's a fumbled snap, exchange, whatever. If you could sign me up for 17 points allowed and 2 turnovers, sign me up for that any game of the week, any day of the week. That is a win for the defense. That being said, and I was told this week I'm a little bit of a Debbie Downer this past week, I guess. So if I guess I'll stay on that theme a little bit here. I want to know, and again, this is something that we'll look back at the tape this week and we'll see how this kind of moves forward. I still think this is a step in the right direction. However, when the game was in the balance, I thought this was more about Detroit's mistakes on offense than it was about the Packers always making plays. And what I mean by that is if you go through, Detroit goes down and scores a touchdown, then the next play or the next drive, they have to punt. However, false start on the offense, holding on the offense. Now, holding, you can argue, right? Like maybe a Packer made a play that forced the holding, which that you still give credit to the defense, but 2 huge miscues, they get completely behind the chains and eventually have to punt. The false start was a huge part of that as well. Then they give a touchdown, then they give a field goal. The next one to open the second half is a turnover on downs with a very questionable 4th and 1 pass, where I think there was actually a few plays on that drive where I thought Detroit did Green Bay some favors with some play calling on that. And then the very next drive is the fumbled snap on the first down. Green Bay scores a touchdown. Now it's 35-17 and all bets are off because Jared Goff and this offense again becomes insanely predictable. You don't have to worry about the running game anymore. And that makes things much easier on the defense. So while again, sign me up for 17 points allowed, 2 turnovers and all of that, 62 yards rushing to the running back, sign me up for that every day of the week. I do question how much of that was Detroit's mistakes and not Green Bay's successes on defense.
Absolutely. Honestly, the more you draw that parallel, it's just like the Patriots-Jets game. The Patriots didn't do anything stellar, but they really capitalized on Zach Wilson's mistakes. And not that it was just Goff's mistakes, but it was the rest of that team. I mean, you saw that Packers 3rd and goal, and I believe it was a face mask call. Like that is just an irreparable football situation that is unaffordable in any circumstance, and it gave it to them. Yep. So when we look at this game holistically, can we try and pick some stars other than Aaron Jones?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, Rodgers' performance, right? 22 of 27, 4 touchdowns, no picks. I thought he did the one throw into triple coverage to Adams was a little bit questionable. I think, he had a few opportunities to hit MVS on deep passes that I'm sure he would have liked to have back. I thought there were maybe a couple pressures that he took that maybe he could have got the ball out earlier, but I still think anytime you're 22 of 27, 255, like that's just goes to show how good Aaron Rodgers is when you're 22 of 27, 255 and 4 touchdowns, and you're labeling the few things that maybe he could have done better because he's Aaron Rodgers. And it's so easy to take all that for granted. I thought Devontae Adams, 8 for 121, and not only just 8 for 121, how he got to 8 for 121, because listen, and obviously, this, Rachel, as well, every team is keen on Devontae and trying to take him away. and the deep ball on the big third down to get separation, and then to flash late hands, get them out. And it's just like, there's nothing that the corner, I mean, the corner wasn't even in like brutal position. And it's just Devontae being Devontae and a gorgeous throw from Aaron. And then like just the couple other plays where, I mean, he broke a couple ankles. Like my ankles hurt in the crowd from some of the things that he did to opposing cornerbacks on those plays. So I thought that was really impressive. I think Eric Stokes, I think you have to give him credit as well. His real first extended action in the NFL, he gets targeted on a couple big plays, makes the most of them. And I think that's definitely noteworthy also. How about you?
I think you're spot on. The separation for Devontae is always impressive, but it's the hands for me. He barely drops those things. I've tweeted it once, I'll tweet it again. I would trust him to catch my firstborn child in the air without a doubt. And there's not many people I could say that for. Devontae Adams is definitely one of them. And I have to spot you go.
I was just gonna say, it's so rare because everyone knows about his superpower at the line of scrimmage to be able to just get off the line, and it's so crazy. But to your point, his contested catches at the point of attack, again, getting the late hands up, knowing exactly when to not give up the play early and give a tip to the defender, and then hang on to the football in some of those contested situations. It was something that he had kind of coming out in college, and him and Carr had a really good rapport with it, but he's developed even more in the NFL, and he's such a special player. It's so fun to watch.
Exactly. It's lucky to be a fan to watch that, lucky to be someone to cover that, lucky to be a quarterback that gets to throw to someone like that. So he definitely improves the game around him. I have to spotlight Devondre Campbell, led both teams with 13 tackles. That interception was great. I've been really high on his speed and his ability to be everywhere. It has tripped him up with a flag last game, but I do think he used it to his advantage this time. I think he's really showing that sideline to sideline coverage. And again, it was impressive all around tonight. Got to give a hat tip to AJ Dillon. I noticed twice lining up at full back and throwing in some key blocks. I mean, unbeatable. He's already trying to be more of a pass catcher. I just think he wants to be as useful as possible, and that's admirable to someone who already carries enough of an importance. And I don't want to say seniority compared to people like Mercedes Lewis and Rogers, but knows his place and knows that he is important to this team. And the Lambeau crowd, to see those fans bring Jones up and do that Lambeau leap, that to me was just like a goosebump feeling that only few sensations give you that in sports. But again, like you said, after such a long period of time, to see these fans and these players fired up to share that tradition together, nothing like it.
And I think, and you bring up a really fantastic point with AJ Dillon. I think when we kind of talked about the players with Devontae and Aaron Jones kind of being the guys, it's something special about this Matt LaFleur offense where you do have guys like Alan Lazard, Equinemius St. Brown in this game, AJ Dillon, like MVS, like some of these guys, it goes so unnoticed. Even Randall Cobb, like doing some real dirty work type stuff. Mercedes Lewis is obviously the poster boy for it, but like Daphne was another one today. Like those guys don't always get the credit. And a lot of times, especially skill position players, right? It's one thing for an offensive lineman to take pride in their an extra block here, things like that. But for skill position players, and Alan Lazard is a absolute stud at Iowa State, right? Like even a Malik Taylor is a stud at his college. Like all of these guys are the guy at their individual college for the most part. Now maybe, a Tunyon or a Daphne come up and whatever, but like for the most part, these guys are like the star. Mercedes Lewis, a first round pick at tight end. So to buy in to being the fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth guy, AJ Dillon saw like a billion carries in 9-man boxes, and literally everyone in that game focused on AJ Dillon. But to have AJ Dillon throwing blocks for Aaron Jones, to have Randall Cobb coming on a counter and then blocking for Aaron Jones on a counter play, like those things are so easy to go unnoticed. But for Matt LaFleur and that offense to get those sort of guys to buy in, to open up, that's how Aaron Jones has 4 touchdown games. And without that, you see a lot more of an offense that looks like an offense against the Saints. With that sort of stuff, you see a lot more of what we saw today against Detroit.
You're absolutely right. Are there any final thoughts from your seats in the bleachers?
No, I think we honestly covered everything, Rachel. The only other thing I had actually on my notes, I think, was the Kylin Hill kick return. And there was a little bit of a flukiness where he runs into his own guy and then gets the bounce out. But you can just see still the he has a little bit more juice back there, and just having a little bit of that can go a long way. If you get one crease or a Detroit player, or, opposing special teams player misses an alley, Kylin Hill has the ability to do something with that. We saw that today. And I think, in a moment where they needed a little bit of a boost after Detroit just scored a touchdown, I think that just even provides a little bit more, gives the offense a better down and distance. And, who knows if you have a holding penalty there, or it's a, ball that gets pinned deep in your own end zone and you got to go 90 yards. It just makes things that much more daunting. And I thought that was a really nice spark from Kylin Hill. And I think, as far as I know, my only other note here, I don't think there were, knock on everything we can, I don't think there were any major injuries that came out of that game either. So a couple of real positives there also.
You're absolutely right on both. The only thing I noticed was Garvin left for a hot second, but then came back and played. Yep. And it's been awesome to see Kylin Hill separate himself from Amari Rodgers and kind of own this return game. But I mean, the hurdles, I don't know if I'll ever get over the athleticism for that. I asked Coach Ben Sermons a few weeks ago, do you talk to Kylin about the risk of doing that in the NFL? Obviously, he was known for doing that at Mississippi State, but are you cool with that as his coach? And he said, listen, it's a risk and you have to educate them on the risk. As soon as you go airborne, you are accepting that risk. But if he's comfortable with doing it to get the play done, then at the end of the day, that's what happens. And we saw an amazing hurdle tonight. But at the end of the day, it's cool to see Kylin Hill take on that sort of opportunity for sure. Again, it's totally nice to see rookies kind of settle into their role, even if, again, this is a week-to-week game planning team.
Totally agreed. No, it's fun to see a little bit of a spark there from their return game, something that has been missing for some time now for Green Bay.
Absolutely right. Well, thanks for joining me tonight on Pack a Day, Andy Herman.
Thank you for joining me. This is awesome. We definitely have to do it again sometime. Obviously, it was amazing being in the stands, and we'll have breakdowns all this week right here on the videos. We're going to have Peter Bukowski and, of course, Ben Fennell later in the week. So should be a ton of fun covering everything as we get ready for San Francisco as well. But Rachel, this is always amazing. I always appreciate when you're able to come on.
I'm always happy to be here. And as of now, they are +3 against the 49ers.
Oh, interesting. It's going to be a really fun game. I can't wait for it. All right, well, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us. But until next time, and as always, Rachel, go Pack, go.
Woo-woo.